up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Gayside Stories, where the gay shit goes. I am your host, Trilificent. Thank you so much for joining me for another week. As a reminder, you guys can listen to this show on Pippa, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, GaysideStories.com/shows, or wherever you get your podcasts. Remember to use the hashtag GaysidePod when you're live tweeting or posting about the show. Thank you to everyone that continues to do that every week. The Gayside culture and the audience survey information is in the show notes. So if you want to take a little time to take that survey, again, that link is in the show notes. And the description of what the Gayside culture upcoming series is also in the show notes. The culture series will be beginning in a few weeks, so please send in your audio clips if you haven't already. If I hit you up and you agree to do it, please send that in if you haven't. And if this is your first time hearing about it and you want to participate, then email me, tweet me, send me a message on Instagram, whatever it takes, and we can work it out from there. With that being said, you guys, I am going to be taking a summer hiatus from the show. I know I teased about this probably a few weeks ago, but to be quite honest, I really need a little bit of a break. So I will be doing that. This will be the last episode posted for a little while, but I will be back, and that's that, self-care. So with that being said, let's get into this week's episode. So I am here with author Jarrod D. King. He has graciously agreed to be a part of the show this week, and I want to thank him for that. Jarrod, say hi to the people.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be on the show. I've actually grown to be a fan, so I'm excited.
Thank you so much. I don't know how we crossed paths, but things just happen that are supposed to happen. I've learned to accept that.
Right.
People come across, and acquaintances and new friends and all of those good things. So I'm glad that it happened. Thank you to Twitter. I don't know how, but shout out to Twitter. It does good things every now and then.
Yeah, every now and then.
So I'm really excited for you to be on the show because I have a lot of questions about writing and whatnot. And you also have a book that is out, so I'm excited to hear about that as well. But before we get into all that, let's run through one of the usual segments, and that is the Come Quick segment.
I'm gonna come, sir.
Oh, yeah!
So first up, and I think people probably may have seen this on Twitter, because I think it sparked a little bit of, I don't want to say outrage, but people had some opinions. But GLAAD's movie report finds troubling drop in LGBTQ representation. So GLAAD did this analysis, and it says movies from Hollywood's major studios last year had the lowest percentage of lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual characters since 2012. So gay and transgender media advocacy group GLAAD said in its annual studio responsibility index that of the 109 releases by the 7 largest movie studios in 2017, just 14, or 12.8%, included LGBTQ characters. GLAAD called on Hollywood to have 20% of its annual film releases include a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or gender fluid character by 2021, rising to 50% of output by 2024. So I'm going to say guess first. How do you feel about this report?
I find it really surprising, actually, that the amount of characters that we have has actually dropped down since a few years ago. So, and I don't really know exactly what the debate has been, though. Like what have people been saying? Because personally, I feel like what GLAAD is doing is a good thing to kind of like keep Hollywood accountable for the way that they're portraying our community. But I'm just I'm surprised to hear that there really is a debate, unless it's coming from like, you know, a different from a group outside of the LGBT community. So
I saw a little bit from both inside and out, and it kind of took this tone of, oh man, they want everything to be gay. And I was just like, okay, are we doing this? Are we doing this?
Every time.
Every time. It's like, and the thing about it is, a lot of times what people, even people within the community, which is sad, feel like the smallest hints of something LGBT counts as full inclusion and representation. For example, this thing that studios and writers and whatnot have been doing by coming out after the fact saying, oh, this character is bisexual or pansexual, didn't you know?
Right.
Like J.K. Rowling coming out after the fact, oh, Dumbledore was gay, didn't you know? And it's like, really, sis? He did. Number one. So this does nothing for us. Or recently, when I don't remember who it was exactly, when they came out saying that Lando Calrissian is pansexual.
Right. I heard about that. As well. And that's one of those. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's one of those things where, again, it's, why would we know that if you didn't put it in the movie? My whole thing is, if it's not in the movie, what good does it do? And I've heard people talk about this on their podcast. I know they talked about this on the Mega Sheen podcast, and I agree. I've heard it on other podcasts as well, but I'm really racking my brain right now saying, what good does it do to our community to say this character is XYZ after the fact and it's not a part of the movie, so you don't see it?
Right.
I don't get the afterthought.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of what we do when we look on like some of our old shows. Like, you know how people think that like Velma from Scooby-Doo is like a gay icon or something. Like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, it's not really what the character was, but you just kind of throw that on them. And that's one thing for us to do, but for, you know, like a director or writer, whoever said that, to say that after the fact and not actually put that representation in the movie, it's kind of like a cheap tactic to kind of gain favor with the LGBT community.
Agreed. So my only trepidation, I guess, with this is 50% of all movies. I feel like that's a little bit much. Not saying that I wouldn't like to see it, but I can just see the argument of, I mean, LGBT people only make up 5% of the population, which, I mean, let's be honest, that's the ones who don't mind being out and included. I feel like it's higher than that, but go off, everyone. So I don't know. I just feel like 50% is, because I can just see the pushback of 50% of Americans, or 50%. Well, this is talking about Hollywood specifically. So 50% of Americans are not LGBT. So why would 50% of the movies be? Again, not saying I don't want to see it, not saying that it wouldn't be awesome, but I feel like that is a little bit of a lofty goal, especially because a lot of times they being Hollywood, don't even get the representation right. So I would rather see a push of quality along with the quantity versus strictly quantity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And well, and what year did they say that they wanted that? Because I know it was like a specific year, like 2020 or 2030 or something like that.
Right. So
you remember something in the future. So
they're calling for 20% of the annual film releases to be including one of those characters by 2021, and then they want 50% by 2024.
Okay.
I feel like that's such a short time frame. Like,
you
to
know,
go from 20 to 50 in 3 years.
But you know what? The thing is, I feel like a lot of people on the other side of this conversation already feel like it's 50% anyway.
That's true.
So
That's true.
I feel like once we actually get there, I think it'll either be old and maybe we can get to the point where these characters are not gay first, but they're just gay characters going through the same stuff that everybody else is going through. Or not, I mean, not even gay, but just LGBTQ, you know. Um, but, you know, I mean, and I think, you know, there's also a realization emerging that a lot of people realize that, you know, you can still be a part of the LGBTQ community and be in a straight relationship. You know, if you're, you know, if you're like a trans man that's with a woman or, you know, something of the sort, you know. So I think that more people are hopefully, I mean, you know, I know that it is a lofty goal in such a short amount of time, but you know, you kind of have to shoot for the stars, I guess, to get somewhere.
I get that. My other concern with that, I guess, is how much of the representation is going to be written by someone from the LGBTQ community. How much is it going to be starring? Because it's easy for Hollywood to say, oh, look, we're doing representation, and all of the gay characters in a movie are actually straight actors or straight actors playing transgender roles. So I'm just, again, I feel like there are more facets to the push and the argument than just strictly representation. And I wonder if the representation also includes, again, the behind the camera type things, or is it strictly in front of the camera?
Yeah, that's true. It does sound, from the way it sounds, it does sound like it's more in front of the camera, but behind the scenes is just as important as well.
Yeah, because I think it's very important for us to be in control of the tale for us.
Right.
Because because that's when I feel like, and I could be wrong, maybe it's my opinion or whatever, I feel like when we are not included in the writer's room, or when we're not allowed to be behind the camera, or all of those things, that's when it kind of goes wrong. Not always. There are some examples and times when it's good and we feel represented, but even then then you have to look at the race aspect. There's so many aspects to it. So I wonder, because again, it could be easy for Hollywood to say, look, we did all of these movies and they have characters and then every one of them is white.
Right.
Or something of that. So I just wonder about the nuance of this push. Do we get into the nitty gritty and say, okay, we want representation for the community, but we want black trans women to have positive representation, and we want Latino or Latinx bisexual people to have positive representation? You know what I mean? We want gay Asian men and women to have representation, and it's not just as long as it's LGBT, it's fine, and then all of them are white.
Right. Because then we get into another issue.
Exactly. So then I feel like I don't want to get into this thing where we're pushing for one thing and then it's a constant effort upon effort upon effort, because instead of pushing for a more total view of representation, it's just a generic push. And I feel like whenever there's a generic push in anything, it's always going to default back to white, or it's going to default back to men. So hopefully definitely the inner workings of that report and the push and the accountability will be inclusive.
Yeah.
Because it's go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that it's also important. Like, that's a good point that you make, and I don't remember them even mentioning race as a part of that conversation. And so, if anybody listening is a part of GLAAD, or if anybody wants to write a letter or something and let them know, like tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, it has to be about everybody. This is a good thing, but, let's make sure we're inclusive. Just, I don't know. I think it's important to say those things beforehand, before we get into the arguing stage. So,
Agreed. Because we just don't want to get into a situation where it's we got what we wanted. What are y'all complaining about? And all of the black and brown people are like, we are nowhere to be seen.
right.
And
right.
if we are, it's few and far in between, and we're token characters and we're sidekicks and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say I'm glad that GLAAD does this because it is important. And Hollywood, as you can see, if they're not, it seems like if you don't keep your foot constantly on people's neck, then they will regret. What am I saying? Then they will.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, they'll go back to the defaults and leave people high and dry. Like, we have to keep our foot on their necks.
Yeah.
So, speaking of keeping a foot on a neck, the next article says even anti-gay EU nations must now recognize same-sex couples. So the European Court of Justice has determined that all member states must recognize the rights of same-sex spouses, even in countries where same-sex marriage is not legal. The ruling came about after Romanian officials refused to grant residency to Claiborne Hamilton, an American who married his Romanian partner Adrian Coleman in Brussels in 2010. Wow, this is kind of old. So the court's decision stated that while EU countries may keep, quote unquote, the freedom whether or not to authorize marriage between persons of the same sex, they may not obstruct the freedom of an EU citizen by refusing to grant his same-sex spouse, a national of a country that is not an EU member state, a derived right of residence in their territory. The majority of EU nations have marriage equality. Interesting. America. I mean, I know we have it, but America. But some offer civil unions with equivalent or limited rights. In addition to Romania, other EU countries that have no legislation recognizing same-sex unions or marriages include Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Slovakia, and Bulgaria. So I thought that this was really interesting because it's like a win to a fault. Because it's like they're saying, okay, you can't deny these couples of their, I guess, marriage rights if one of the partners is a native of that country, but you can still refuse to recognize marriage of, I guess, people that live there, if that makes sense. So it's like you don't have to recognize same-sex marriage in your country. You don't have to make it legal.
Right.
But if a resident, if they come in married, then you do have to recognize it.
Right.
I feel like it's kind of weird, you know what I mean? Even the way that the article reads was kind of weird and a little bit hard to follow. But I mean, it's the European Union, so I'm not surprised. And we're American. We'd be like, America, you know. You know, even if you don't realize you're doing it sometimes. However, I do think it's interesting. But then I wonder while it is good, I wonder what kind of position that puts the couples in. You know, I wonder if that kind of puts a target on their back.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, it's good, but in practice, how much of a target are you painting on your back when you go into a country that is not really accepting of your relationship?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely see it mostly as a positive and as a step in the right direction. And I think that this could be a way for those other countries to experience what it's like to actually, you know, cater to all types of relationships. And then maybe the people of those countries could adopt the same uh, the same rules, so that it would just be a normal thing for the residents of that country as well.
Yeah, I agree. I almost feel like it's a missed opportunity by the EU to say, y'all need to get with the times. If most of us accept same-sex marriage, then you little outlying countries, y'all need to get with the program, get with the winning team, ho. But instead, they're just like, look, okay, now I know they came to XYZ country and got married, and now they moving back, and you don't like it, but you're just gonna have to accept it. So it feels like a Band-Aid instead of some Neosporin, and with the Band-Aid, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I don't really know how their government operates. If it was similar to like a U.S. Supreme Court saying everybody gets gay marriage now, because when we were going through the process in our country, it was kind of like that in the first place, because you could get married in one state and then depending on another state's laws, you may be accepted, but they may not be married. It was some kind of weirdness. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's well, this only applies to nations that are a part of the European Union.
Okay.
And then I think it's the specific ruling, because here they ruled, okay, all marriage or same-sex marriage is legal. But they could have ruled something similar where it's like, if you get married in, I can't think of any states that I don't know. Let's just say you get married in Maine, and then one of the partners was a native Texan, so y'all moved back to Texas. So now Texas, you have to recognize that marriage, even if it's not legal in your state, versus saying it's legal everywhere. Everybody has to get with the program. I think that's the difference in the rulings. And that's why I'm saying it feels like a missed opportunity. I don't know about the power of the EU. It just feels like a missed opportunity where they could have said, if you are part of the EU, same-sex marriage is legal, get with it, or your membership is going to be in jeopardy. And instead, it's kind of like, you don't have to marry people in your country if you don't want to, but if they get married somewhere else and come back, it's legal. Like it's a step in the right direction, but it could have been a leap.
Right. No, I agree. I understand.
So
I hear you on that one.
I don't know. But again, we're moving in the right direction. But this article, I wanted to highlight it not only because it is a positive, but also as a reminder to people that LGBT rights are not as far along as a lot of people think they are. Now, don't get me wrong. We've made a lot of headway. We have had a lot of victories, but depending on where in the world you are, there's still a lot to fight for, to be on equal footing with heterosexual people.
To even just exist sometimes, depending on what country you're in.
And then it gets worse from there, because there's a lot of countries where it's illegal. I just read an article on another episode where they were talking about in India, and homosexual sex in India is illegal still.
Okay. Wow.
So there's countries where it's illegal. There's countries where it's punishable by death. So I know, especially. I'm
surprised at India though, because didn't they have like a gay prince or something?
Did they?
Like, I could have sworn they had like a gay prince in India or something. I don't know. I have to go look that up, but I'm almost positive, and so I'm surprised to hear that. But
it may be one of those things where they don't make it illegal to be gay, but to have gay sex.
Yeah.
Because from what I read in that article, they were saying specifically homosexual sex is illegal. So it's like, you can be gay all you want to, but don't you get out here and use your genitals, you know? And it's like, well, what's you almost like, well, what's the point?
Really?
what's the point? But I get it. So again, step in the right direction, but hopefully we can continue to push, and it's not like kind of how it feels in America, where once gay marriage was legalized, a lot of people in the fight, I guess, were like, oh, we won, it's all good, it's all done. And now we're dealing with who we have in the White House, and they are rolling back any and everything that they can,
right?
And I don't know, so gotta hope for the best. Best.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can do. It's really kind of sad what's going on right now.
It really is. You would think that in 2018 things would be so far along. You would think that Republicans would not still be trying to fight basic human rights, but
right,
you can't put. I don't know.
I mean, you know, we're not even in a lot of states. We're not even considered a protected class as far as jobs and stuff are concerned. And you know,
exactly.
There's a lot of other stuff that needs to be done
or redone, because, like I said, there are some places where we had a lot of protections and rights, and they're trying to roll it back. And there are places that are doing well, and there are other places that are like good.
Yeah.
So, shout out to the EU for making some strides. Hopefully they continue to do that, and maybe sometime in the future they will step up and say, okay, if you are in the EU, same-sex marriage has to be legal in your country or you have to get out. I would like to see that, but you never know.
I would too.
You know, politics and economics and all of that stuff, it plays a huge role in everything.
It's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough enough trying to get a lot of people to go with you to the movies somewhere. So imagine trying to get,
say that.
You know, imagine trying to get whole countries together. Jeez.
Unless it's the Avengers, because
right, we will get together for that.
Everybody wants to go to that. Okay, so let's transition on to the main topic so that I can learn from you and soak up some of your knowledge. So we're going to talk about writing because you are an author, and I'm very curious about so many things. So first up, I want to talk about representation in the writing community.
Okay.
I wanted to get your thoughts on it, and I also wanted to know what you feel is lacking as far as representation.
All right. Well, I mean, as far as the writers are concerned, I think there are plenty of us out there. So I think, you know, a lot of times it's just hard for us to really get noticed or get seen as authors. But, you know, I think with the advent of, you know, like Amazon publishing, you know, all the self-publishing stuff that we have, it's a lot easier these days to kind of get out there and kind of build your own brand and make a way for yourself if you're not necessarily somebody whom, you know, agents and publishers would immediately pick up. Now, as far as representation within, you know, within fiction or you know, within writing or in the media in general, I guess it kind of comes down to that. You know, there are some things that I think are missing. We have a lot of fiction and nonfiction that's about slavery or civil rights. We have, even in Black gay fiction, we have a lot of fiction that kind of focuses on sex and relationships. And while I don't think there's anything wrong with any of those areas, and I think that we definitely need all of those types of stories, I think I know that we're capable of more of more. You know, I know that we have a bigger range to show, and I think the world needs to know that. You know, um, I also think, you know, you need a proper handling of Black and or LGBTQ characters so that they're not, you know, tokens or stereotypes. You know, we can. I don't know if you've heard of like the kill your gays trope. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
So basically, it's like, you know, you get you put a gay character in amongst your cast or something, and once they serve their purpose, they're kind of killed off by the villain or whatever, or they're,
Oh.
you know,
Mhm.
so they're there for the purpose of showing diversity, but then it's like, okay, we're done with them, and then let's move on with the regular story. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So
So
they serve for diversity, but they don't have a purpose in the actual story.
right,
Got it.
right,
Got it.
and
That's fucked up.
yeah, it's like one of those things, you know. So there are a lot of different ways that we could kind of get around that. Um, One of the things that I had even talked about, I think even on my own podcast I do, was the descriptions of characters of color in books,
Hmm.
where, you know, you'll be reading along and you'll have this idea that, you know, the main character is white, and you get all of these fancy descriptions of different characters, and then all of a sudden they'll describe the person on the bus as, you know, she was a Black woman, da 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 da, or, you know, it just kind of shows that instead of describing this person the same way you describe all of your other characters, you just say she's Black, or, you know, or he's, or you had, you know, a couple Black kids were, you know, running down the street, and, you know, that's kind of how you describe that scene. It's very shorthand, and it kind of shows other characters as, I don't know, deviations uh from the standard, you know.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so that's one of the things that I try to look out for. I think, you know, there, you know, I'm not going to be super strict about this, because I realize that there are sometimes when you do need to kind of give a shorthand description for certain characters, but I think that there is a better way to kind of treat characters of color in books that are majority one race or the other, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So, and oh, and lastly, I think you know, we should have stories that don't always end tragically for LGBTQ
Woo, say
characters.
that.
You know, I mean, there's room for any kind of ending that you want, but many times just because you're you're gay or something, it means it's going to end badly for you. You know, you're going to end up alone. You're going to end up dying of AIDS or something like that, and that's the message that gets sent. And that's not the only message that we should be sending. So,
Hmm. 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 Okay, so you made a lot of interesting points, and I'm curious now about the goal of your own writing. So speak on that a little bit.
my goal in writing is really to give people like us a way of kind of escaping the confines of our society and really enjoying the fullness of who we are. I think we do a lot of compromising and dumbing down just to fit in, even those of us who are out.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think I just want us all to feel heard, seen, and loved, and to know that it's possible to feel that way in real life if we keep fighting for it. Um, you know, so I think that when you read one of my stories, you get the feeling that that you belong, or that you are seen, you're accepted, even if just for a few minutes. Um, so that's really kind of what I'm trying to give people with my writing, on top of on top of being entertaining. You know, I really want it to be entertaining first, uh, but I mean, I think that other side is definitely a goal for me.
Okay, that's interesting. Interesting. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about your actual writing.
Okay.
So what's your writing style?
My writing style, do you mean like genre or do you mean how do you mean?
The genre, the point of view, things of that nature. Like
Okay.
what does a Jarrod King story look like? Basically.
Well, yeah. Typically my stories are gonna be something weird is gonna be happening in my stories. So whether it's fantasy or sci-fi, it might be something that seems like a normal drama, but something's gonna happen that kind of turns everything on its head. So that's kind of my style. I kind of I use third person perspective I used third person perspective for my first novel, Pangaea, Unsettled Land. And the book that I'm currently writing is in first person, so I'm trying to switch it up.
Okay. Come on.
But yeah,
variety.
I'm trying to give you some variety, trying to give give you some different perspectives, and trying to branch out and broaden my horizons as well. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, it's like I always try to make it engaging and make it thrilling. I
Right.
think that I want my books to be page turners. So
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah.
So, what's your writing process like?
I typically well, first of all, I mean, I just make sure that I write down any idea, whether it is on Evernote or whether it's on a piece of paper. Every time I get an idea, I make sure I write it down or record my voice saying it. Um, and it's funny because it's like 99% of the time I never go back to those ideas. And it's like sometimes something will just spark in my head and I'll start riffing off of that, kind of writing a little bit, and then it all kind of comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my process really is to start off with that. Once I get that inspiration or idea, then the next thing is to outline it a little bit. I mean, a lot of people try to stay in one of these two camps, which is like a plotter, which is where you outline everything, every scene, and all the characters and stuff. And then you have people they call like pantsers, which is basically you fly by the seat of your pants when you're writing. You don't know what's going to come. You just go to a blank page and you just start writing. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm more in between. So I'll plan I'll plan everything. I think maybe that is more of a confidence thing, just so I feel like, okay, going into this, I know what's going to happen. But once I get into the story, it's like stuff starts changing all the time. I have to go back and change my outline. So yeah, so I'm very fluid like that, you know. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's my writing process in a nutshell. I'll get it down, and then of course once you get into publishing, that's a whole different process there. But
Right. So, how do you keep the details straight when you're more fluid?
um, that's a good question. I mean, I think well, you mean as far as the plot goes, as far as the plot details, or
I mean plot details and minor details, because I
okay.
know like a lot of times you can go back and you can tell sometimes in a book or even maybe a book series, you can tell where the author changed their mind about something or they got a detail wrong, and those
Mm,
avid readers will be like, well, it was like this on page 4, and then I get to page 260 and it's this. So what is the truth, Oprah gift? So I just wonder if you don't plan every little thing out, which I get that people can do that, but I can't even wrap my brain around that right now. So if you're more fluid with it, then how do you keep the details straight in your head or in your writing?
You know, the thing about writing is that you can't really keep them all straight
Mm-hmm.
on the first draft, you know? So the thing is to just write the first draft without even thinking about keeping all the details together. Just get it all out. Don't worry about how badly it's formatted or worded or whatever. Um, the details you can kind of bring them all together once you go into editing. You can read over what you wrote. And personally, I mean, I think I'm actually I have a little bit more skill maybe than others as far as that is concerned, kind of going back and, you know, uh, remembering what I had written, 10 chapters ago and saying, okay, well, it needs to be like this because I wrote it like this or whatever. Or even in editing, when I go back and I make a note like, okay, I need to make sure that this happens here so that it doesn't just pop up out of nowhere later on.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I personally have that kind of a skill, just the way that my brain works. But a lot of times people will have to rely on an editor or rely on I forget what they call. They have somebody who specifically looks for it. They call them like a continuity editor or something, and that's somebody that you can go that will check in on those specific details to make sure that they're consistent, to make sure that you don't have any character name changes towards the end of the book, that you described something one way that you did later, that kind of thing. So there are ways around that.
Okay. So you spoke on editing a bit, and the next thing that I wanted to talk about is the road to getting published. So does the editing for you specifically fall separately from publishing, or is it part of that process?
It's definitely a part of that process. I feel like if I didn't want to publish, I wouldn't edit. So, so yeah, it's definitely a part of the process.
Well, the reason why I asked that because I'm wondering if it's like a thing where you edit it to the best of your ability beforehand and then you start doing publishing, or if it's just ingrained in the actual process. So it's like once you're done, then it's like, okay, I'm going towards publishing, knowing that the editing will be part of that process.
Okay. Yeah, no, I would. My thing is, I think once you're on the road to publishing, you are you're looking at doing the editing yourself at least first. Um, Whether you're going the traditional publishing route or you're self-publishing, you want to make sure that you have your best version to give out.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll do some self-editing, then you'll send it out to beta readers to get some ideas. So these are like close friends and stuff that will read your book and let hey, this isn't good, or this works for me, or I need more of this, that kind of thing. And then you'll go back and edit it again,
Mm-hmm.
or do your rewrites or whatever. Uh, and then from there, I would, it doesn't necessarily have to follow the same path, but I would go to a more professional editor, where you pay somebody to kind of go through it, let you know what needs to be changed. You might do this 2 or 3 times before getting to that publishable point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then once you feel that it is at a point uh, where there's not much that needs to be changed, where you're happy with it, then if you're doing a self-publishing thing, then you just you get all the well, you have to get like a cover, you got to get your well, you don't have to get your ISBNs, but you can. I do. um you know and then you self-publish it on Amazon or Smashwords or whatever, and push that out to people. Traditional is a little bit harder to get your book out to people because it requires it requires going through gatekeepers.
Mm.
So you have to buy the Writer's Digest book to get all of the different agents that are open to submissions, and then you have to see exactly what their submission guidelines are. You have to go to each of those agents' websites and see what their guidelines are, and then you have to write a letter to that specific. It's a whole thing.
Right.
And then you write those letters and then you send them out, and then you won't hear back from them for weeks. Some of them you won't ever hear back from. Most of them you'll get back a form letter saying they hate your book.
Oh God.
Well, not like that, but I'm exaggerating.
Yeah,
But,
just a rejection.
yeah, they'll give you rejection. If you're lucky, they'll give you a personalized rejection to tell you what needs work. If you're really lucky, they'll ask you for a few chapters or a full manuscript, and then you can move on from there. But it's so much harder because you're sending out those letters, but the people who get the letters first aren't necessarily the agents who are looking for that. They have interns and stuff kind of sifting through all of the submissions that they get, and they'll put you in a pile somewhere, and you're really kind of leaving it up to chance. So I mean, that's why I self-publish, because I would rather just bypass all of that. But you still have to make sure that you have a high quality product at the end of the day, because you don't want people to look at it and you want people to look at it and think that it is on the same level as a traditionally published book.
So that just sparked a random question in my head. Do you find that there's a little bit of a stigma of self-published books versus traditionally published books?
Definitely. There definitely is. There's a sense of authority and prestige that comes along with traditional publishing. When you have that imprint on the spine of your book that says like Penguin or any of those publishing companies, any of those big publishing companies,
right,
then people know you're legit, and people know this is going to be a good book, or at least that's the impression that they get.
Because we can talk about how many crappy books. Anyway, go ahead.
Right,
go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
Even with traditional. But yeah, with independent publishing, with self-publishing, there's this idea that you just wrote a book real quick and you put it out there without any editing, without any serious attention to the cover. I mean, I see a lot of self-published covers that are just not good, and and that may be because you didn't have a lot of money to do a professional cover. That may just be a lack of knowledge. It may just be because you're not trying to build a business out of this, and the people who were going to read your book really don't care about the cover. So there's a lot. Well, let me jump back. There is a range of professionalism that comes with self-published that you don't get in traditionally published books, where because traditionally published books are all going to meet a certain standard, whereas it's kind of more of a free-for-all for self-published. So that's where I think the stigma comes from. It's like, oh, you're self-published. Well, I've read so and so, and that was a piece of crap. So I don't know.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, well, anybody can do it. So the stigma is it's not really an accomplishment because anyone can do it.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about your education of all of this. So how did you learn about publishing? I hear, and I'm guessing, I could be wrong, it sounds like some trial and error as far as self-publishing versus traditional publishing. But I'm just curious about how you accumulated the knowledge that you have now.
I accumulated the knowledge after writing my first book. I was of the mind that I was going to get published, with one of the big five publishers, and I was just, it was going to be great. I was going to have, a black gay fantasy, and it was going to be, because you don't see that often
Mm-hmm.
in traditional publishing. And I was like, all right, so I'm going to get this done. It's going to be published, but it didn't happen that way. I sent out so many letters, query letters to agents trying to get an agent. I didn't get any positive response back. So, I mean, really going through that process is where I learned all of this from.
Mm-hmm.
I had a work friend who had mentioned self-publishing to me, and it kind of clicked in my head. It was like, okay, so why am I going for the traditional publishing route? And I, once I kind of self-reflected, it was really more for the prestige of it all, to be, deemed an author uh, by the big, heads of the writer community would be like a mark of acceptance.
Yeah.
But when you get right down to it, what I want to do is I just want to write, and I want to get paid for it, hopefully make a living off of it at some point. And I don't really need to be picked by anybody, in order for that to happen. So yeah, I mean, that whole process is really where I gained all of the knowledge from it.
So
Yeah.
how did you go about learning the specifics of self-publishing? Like, was it just systematic Google, or was there like a book? I mean, you don't have to say the specific things. I'm just curious
Right.
about the route that you chose.
Yeah, it was
Or
a lot of
stumbled
Googling.
across, maybe.
Yeah, it was a lot of Googling. I listened to a lot of podcasts about self-publishing, what you needed to do as far as growing an author platform, um, what you needed to do to reach readers, what you need to do to maintain their interest and all that stuff. So it was a combination of Google, watching, well, not watching, but more listening to podcasts and stuff. There's a lot of resources out there that are aimed at helping self-published authors.
Come on, resources. I need to stumble across them myself. Okay. So all of this is interesting, and I'm liking what I'm hearing. So
Okay.
before we talk about, or rather before you talk about your first book, what advice do you have for other aspiring LGBT plus writers?
My advice would be, write what I mean, you hear it all the time, but write what you want to see. Write the book that you want to read. There is so much space in the LGBTQ section of writing that we just have not seen. There's so much blank space there for people to kind of write their story, or write a fictional story. So just write what you want. And also, if you want to do something, and maybe this goes towards creatives in general, if there's something that you want to do that's like special in your life, you have to work on it every day. I find it hard to even start sometimes. So I kind of do this thing. I call it like a 5-minute mandate, where you just force yourself to work on your project for like just 5 minutes. And I feel like if it's truly your passion and you've got nothing, super serious going on in your life that's going to distract you, then you'll end up spending much more time on it than expected. So if you just sit down and write for 5 minutes, or even if you're just sitting down and thinking about your book, thinking about the story and looking at a blank page for 5 minutes, and you might end up spending 10, 20, 30 minutes to an hour working on your project. And that's all you need to do. A little bit every day.
All right. Sounds good. So your first book, Pangaea, Unsettled Land, is a How would you describe it before you get into the specifics? Like, what's the genre and the characterization of it?
Yeah, it's a fantasy. Uh, it would be kind of like it's kind of like a mix between old and new kind of fantasy. So you've got some modernized uh things going on in there, but you have like, like a queen and knights and all that stuff that you would uh typically see in like one of those medieval types of fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a mix of both. Character wise, I have a very diverse cast, I would like to say.
Okay.
um, I have a black gay main character who he's like a noble, he's a college student. I have a warrior who is another black gay man. He's like the fighter of the group. I have the main character's best friend, Gisela, uh who is Latina. And yeah, I have the queen and her sister. They're they're white. I have an Asian president in one of the other countries that's in so there's a nice I tried to include a lot of people in here, but I didn't want to bang people over the head with it either. I mean, those are really descriptors that are just kind of that just kind of slide into the details of the story. So once you know who they are, it really doesn't make too much of a difference, but it means a lot to people who want to kind of see themselves in the story.
Right. As we spoke about earlier, as far as representation in the media. So to wrap things up, why don't you give a synopsis of the book? That way people can get an idea of it and we can go from there.
Cool. So Pangaea is about a young college student who goes with his best friend and a handsome warrior to find out the secrets of an ancient mythical sword that's said to have brought magic to the world. What they find out pits them against elemental spirits, mythical creatures, and the queen who wants all the power in the world. So that's the gist of the story there.
Ooh la la! It sounds right up my alley. I did buy the book, and I had plans of reading it, but this week has just been. This week was like, oh, you want to do things for yourself? No, I was like, oh, okay, well, sure. So before we close this part of the show out, I wanted to, I guess, thank you because it's number one. For me, it's been kind of hard to find these types of books. I know they exist, but it just sometimes it's hard to find the kind that you want because you can look for LGBT books and a lot of it will still be that throwaway character type thing that you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can be hard to find where that character is the central character.
Right.
So I'm glad that we stumbled across each other on Twitter for that reason, but also because in the past I've written, and it's not about me, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is because just what you said about working on your craft every day and kind of just do it. It's so funny that you say that because last night I was FaceTiming with a friend who I've known for, God, so many years. And just out of the blue, he was like, so what's going on with your writing? And I was like, well, see, what had happened was, so I just thought it was interesting that it's like, okay, I'm getting ready to do this show tomorrow with this author and I have all these questions. And then here you come tugging at my wig, so I'm glad that you were willing to come on the show and be candid. I didn't want to get too far into the details because I don't want people to, and when I say people, man, I'm talking about myself, to forget that everyone's journey is different. And so sometimes I feel like people get so stuck in wanting to know the details of exactly how did you do it, what step did you take, that you try to emulate someone else's journey versus getting the generic knowledge, or just getting the bug to get the knowledge for yourself and doing it and blazing your own path and living your own journey, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Totally. And I thank you so much for having me on the show. Um, and I completely understand, everybody has their own way to get there. And that's one of the things that I had learned as well. I'm like trying to do all this like social media stuff, and it is not me at all. Like I just do, it's so funny. Like so I learned like in my own way to figure out like, okay, let me leave that alone. Let me just stick to writing. Let me stick to what I do, and let me let all that follow through. But some people may find a different way. So
okay, one more question before we end this. So how do you promote?
I promote by just going to different blogs, reviewers and stuff. Once I have the book basically done, I'll set a future release date, and then I'll leave some time to get some reviews in, so that way, a lot of people who would be interested in my book would be able to see that this is a good book or whatever. So, reaching out to blogs, reaching out to other reviewers, reaching out to, people that I've come into contact with. You kind of have to use other influencers. And then you also have to maintain, like, if you have like a mailing list, I've heard that is like the best thing to do. So I have a mailing list on my website. So, once I throw out something new, like I just gave out my I have a collection of 2 short stories that I call survival stories, which they're kind of like horror stories, but I gave that out to my email list, and you do that, you have a bunch of people who are eager and in it to kind of grab any content that you put out there. So with the next book, I'm like, I'll send that out to people, and hopefully I'll be getting some more sales with that than I did with the first book.
Okay, that's interesting. Whew, so much to learn, so much to do. So little energy. Oh, so little energy. Okay.
You know what? Don't look at the big picture. Just take your little step. That's another thing that I always have to keep in mind. Is like, don't look at the mountain. Just start climbing.
All right, baby steps.
Right.
Got it. Okay. So that's gonna wrap up the main topic for this show. So let's switch gears again and end things with the queer query.
Question.
So first question, what is happiness to you?
Happiness to me is progress.
Okay.
That's what I've noticed not too long ago, actually. It's kind of something that I recently came to, like, I am at my best when I am making progress or moving towards something. And so that's kind of how I learn. When I used to hear people say, be in love with the journey, not the goal. And I'd be like, well, like, what does that mean? Because right now this is hard.
Right. The journey is trash.
And I kind of just want the big, I just want the piles of money at the end of the rainbow,
Right.
But learning that, the progress, once I'm in it, once I am moving, once I'm doing an interview like this, or doing my own interviews on YouTube, or doing my writing and stuff like that, and kind of moving, and that's where I'm happiest. So the progress, the journey is where I'm happiest.
Okay. I would say for me, happiness is probably seeing the people closest to me be happy, especially if we've known each other long enough, or just are close enough, even if we haven't known each other that long, that I see and experience the adversity that you go through life, to see you come out of that and be genuinely happy. Like I can think of a number of my friends that when we met or over the course of our friendship, they were going through it. Woo, the ghetto. And now to see them happy with, mates or whatever it is, and or as far as work, employment, or just chasing their dreams, their creative endeavors starting to get some traction. It makes me happy to see people close to me be happy.
All right. Yeah, that's beautiful.
See, guys, I am not one of I feel things. I have feelings and emotion. I'm not like just a bucket of surly trash. I don't wear my heart on my sleeve, but I have a heart, and it's like it likes to chill most of the time. But anyway, next question. If you had a weekend with no technology, and that means no phone, no computer, no tablet, all of that, what 3 things would you want to have with you?
Okay, so I thought about this, and I was like, okay, so obviously, and this might be like I don't know if this is a cop-out, but I would definitely take like a pen and some paper, at least, just to write down my thoughts, because, that's one of my outlets.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing, I was kind of stuck on the third thing. If I couldn't have my phone, I'm like, okay, what else can I do? I don't know. I guess some coffee.
Come on, coffee.
That's all I need. I need a pen, paper, and some coffee, and I'm good.
Okay. So I took even though I came up with the question, I took it literal. So I was like, definitely sustenance.
Mm-hmm.
Don't put me anywhere. It was like, I have no technology and I also have no food. Help, please.
God.
So definitely nourishment.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely would want my favorite book so that I could read through that over and over again. And I'm actually going to piggyback on you, and I would want, pen and paper to be able to write. I don't know what I would write. I don't know if I would write a novel, or if it would just be a diary, or if it's just a collection of random thoughts, and then you never know, the next great idea somewhere hidden in it. But I definitely feel like I would just be writing something.
Mm.
So let me read, let me write, and let me eat. And I'll be good.
What book would you take? Do you have a favorite?
I have a couple of favorites, but I think in that instance I probably would take a book called Life Expectancy by Dean Koontz.
Okay.
It's such a weird book. It's so weird, and I think that's why I love it. Like, I don't even know if it's a good book, but it's just so weird. It has these weird twists and turns that it's just like, what is happening in this book? And I just love it. So, like, I think it's one of those books where you read it once a year. It's like, it's time for my annual reading. Almost kind of like Harry Potter or something. I read through Harry Potter probably once every 2 years. I read through the True Blood books. Actually, I haven't done that in a while. I need to do that. But that book is one of the ones I just read over and over and over again. And
really?
Every time I read it, I'm like, what the hell was he thinking when he wrote this book? And it's weird to me. Someone else may read it and be like, okay, you've given it a lot. But it's weird to me, and I like it.
Okay.
So that would be the book.
It's funny. I don't think I've ever. Well, let me take that. Well, I don't reread books. It's weird. Like, I kind of do that with movies too. It's like once I watch it, like, I'm done.
Oh no,
but it sticks with me if it's
rewatch
good.
a movie over and over and over again, and I'll reread a book.
Yeah. All right, that's
Speaking
cool.
of, do you? Okay, this is a bonus question.
Okay.
What is your favorite book? Do you have one?
I have one of my favorite books. Okay, so I will say I loved New England White by Stephen L. Carter,
Okay.
and it's definitely one of my favorite books. It's about a college professor's wife who is trying to, I'm trying to remember, it was like some mystery. She's trying to figure out, uh, I think somebody killed somebody. She's trying to figure out who it was or something. This has like black characters in it. She's a black woman, and there's a lot there's a lot of that commentary that goes into it that just really made the mystery genre so much deeper for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one that I would recommend. Another one, I have like, okay, so let me just give you two more real quick. I'm not going to take everybody's time. But another one that I love was Cloud Atlas, that was made into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
loved it because it had like so many different genres in there and it was all kind of connected. And then the last one I would say would be Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which by Susanna Clark. And that I think was made into like a BBC series. But that's like a fantasy, but it was like super long and it had footnotes and everything. So it was like if you're reading this, it was like reading a textbook. It didn't read like a textbook, but it looked like a textbook. So it could be really intimidating to jump into. But reading it was really interesting, and there were a lot of little side stories and stuff in there. So I would recommend that to somebody who loves fantasy but is interested in a different kind of fantasy. It's different. I will say that.
Okay. I think we kind of gravitate towards those same general things. We just maybe not the same exact things. Because I
Hmm.
like fantasy, I like sci-fi, all that kind of stuff. Like I can read other kind of books. I read thrillers. Like Life Expectancy is a thriller.
Mm.
Um, but I feel like all of the fantasy adventure type stuff that I like, I only or mostly consume through movies.
Hmm.
So I've been trying to read more books like that, but I've been trying to read more in general because I just fell off so hard. It's like I love to read, but it's just like I don't know. I wish I could. I wish I could read and still do other things at the same time
Right.
because then I would
Right.
always be reading.
We could do audiobooks too. That's
Yeah,
kind of
kinda, but
it's not the same.
it's not the same, and you still have to concentrate in
True.
order to get because I've done that before. Like I have an audiobook that I listen to is anyway, but I found myself having to rewind it over and over and over again because I couldn't like I have to concentrate the same way I would have to if I was reading it myself in order to absorb what I'm hearing. It's not like I can't work on the computer or do something like that and be listening to a book at the same time because I just don't grasp it.
Right.
And it makes me mad because I feel like I should be able to, but I can't. It's like I can multitask, and my brain is like, not with
It's like
this.
no.
Try again, Sistren. And I'm like, Okay, so we're gonna wrap this up with a guest question. So it's your turn to ask a question.
Okay. All right. So I think I got a good one.
Okay.
So who would you cast alongside you on your reality show and why? And it could be anybody.
Ooh. Like a
So
full
like
cast or
yeah, like a full cast, like pick like 4 or 5 more people to be on the cast with you on your reality show.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, I don't even know what the premise of the reality show would be because these characters are gonna be a little all over the place. But I would definitely have my friend Nikki. I like to call Greco Thug Mrs. Definitely have her on there because she brings a level of sophisticated ratchet that I love. I would have my friend Candace from my other podcast, Ratchet Ramblings, because she is just a riot. You know, I feel like she would have people laughing all the time. She would probably get dragged for being problematic, but who isn't? Who's not problematic? You know. Let's see, who else? I think I would have. Ooh, this good question. Let's see. I think I would have Kid Fury.
Okay.
For obvious reasons. I just want to say that, like, this list of characters, I don't even know what kind of reality show this would be. Who else? I would have my friend Dion, because I feel like he is the Ricky from Noah's Ark of all of the friends that I have.
Okay.
And I feel like nothing is complete without that you need that sex positive person to kind of spice everything up. You know, you need that Samantha.
Okay.
And I say I don't know anything about Sex in the City except for that character. So how many is that? 4?
Something like she said 4. Isn't it something like 4 or 5? Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Good list.
I think that would work, and probably maybe 1 or 2 more, but I can't think of them off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
So, same question to you: who would be cast alongside you?
Yeah, you know what? I thought about this. I kind of had a hard time with that too. I was like, who am I gonna pick? Like, first of all, I mean, I would definitely pick my brother Justin. He is like we grew up together. He's like a year younger than me. And so we're basically like twins.
Come on, twinning.
So it's like we just play off of each other so well. So I think that would be an interesting dynamic. And we get angry with each other real quick, and it's like explosive. So it would be like, you know, it would be a good little reality show just with the two of us. I would pick. Who else would I pick? I mean, I guess I would go with I don't know. I would pick some other like celebrities and stuff, or some people that we know from these other shows. You know, I would have probably like a Nene, somebody who's like Nene at least. I don't know if it would be Nene herself, but I don't know. I think me and Nene would be good friends. But yeah, I would get her on the show. I would get you know, we would need somebody who's like fiery or something. I don't know. Like, I didn't even think about this question for me, so it's hard because I'm thinking like, who else does everybody else know? But nobody knows anybody that I know. I would just pick. You know what I would do? I would get some of the most problematic Twitter people and put them in a house together, and I would just sit back and watch. That's what I would do.
Come on, Twitter Girls Club.
That would be a good show.
That would be a flaming mess, but I would watch. I would be in. You know what? We will cover it on Ratchet Ramblings.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, that's gonna wrap everything up.
Yes!
Jarrod, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to hop on the show and talk about your writing and give your views on a few other things. Tell people where they can find you and your book and everything that has to do with you.
All right. So my main website, you can just go to jarrodking.com. And my book is titled Pangaea, Unsettled Land. You can find that on Amazon or Apple iBooks, you know, anywhere else where books are sold. And, you know, that's print and ebook. I also have 2 free short horror stories for signing up for my mailing list. That you'll get that automatically. So yeah, check me out at jarrodking.com. And if you want to search for me online on any of my social media pages, just search Jarrod King or Jarrod D. King. You'll find me. I also do, as I said, like a YouTube show where I interview other Black LGBTQ authors. And the people that I do interview, I put on a list on my website so that, it's easier for people to go back and see their work. And then I do my own podcast that I just started not too long ago, which is basically me just kind of giving my thoughts back and forth on my commute to work. So it's a nice little, 20-minute maybe show if you want to listen to that. And you can just search Jarrod D. King again. So, just search my name and you'll find me.
What's the name of the podcast?
Name of the podcast is Jarrod D. King.
Okay.
But the segment that I do is called Uncommuted. So you'll find that on there. But I just tried to make it easy for people to find me because, so right now it's just Jarrod D. King. I might change it. I don't know, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll search for it and put all of that stuff in the show notes. So again, thank you so much for shining your light right here on Gayside Stories.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. And I really loved our conversation.
Same. All right, you guys. So remember, go to GaysideStories.com. That is the hub for more information about the show. You can email me at GaysideStories@gmail.com if you have something to say, comments, concerns, questions, suggestions for show topics. If you want to be on the show or if you want me on your show, all of that can go to that email address. Follow, interact on social media, like the Facebook page. All of that is all over the place. You guys should know where you can find me. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you have not already, take a little time, go over to Apple Podcasts, even if you don't listen on Apple Podcasts, and leave a rating. And if you really want to do something special, then go ahead and write a review. That would be outstanding. Make sure you guys are sharing this show with others. Word of mouth is still the best way to get things out there and grow and create a community and reach a bigger audience. So again, you guys, thank you for listening. And as always, make sure that you are protecting your walls. They will crumble. I keep saying that, and I keep seeing examples of crumbled walls all over the place. So I'm just saying, make sure you're protecting them. And I'm out. See you guys in a few weeks.